Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariragavacharyas Tatada Sisimad Abhay Charan Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda Ki Jai Namacharya Sila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Pavanitananda Shri Girada Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Syama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Sri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Yamuna Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktabinda Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Mahaparana Ki Jai, ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glory to the assembled devotees, all glory to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Srimati Shikram Swami. Hare Krishna. Today we're reading from the third canto. Chapter Hare Krishna. Chapter 14, text number 43. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Nastapareshu Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistike. Shrinvata Svakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Rijantasto Yapatrani Vidunoti Suritsatam Krishne Svadamo Bhagate Dhammagyana Divisaha Kalo Nasta Disamesha Pura Noko Lodita Tamadi Devam Karuna Nidanam Tamalavanam Suhita Bhataram Apara Sangsara Samudra Setam Bhajamahe Bhagavata Sarupam. Close the door. I worship the original person, the ocean of mercy, whose bodily complexion is like a tamal tree. He incarnates in this world for the welfare of all. He is the bridge for crossing over the ocean of material existence, and his body is Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a story of Diti and her husband preceding the birth of Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, two demons. So Diti's just found out that her children, her two sons, will be killed by the personality of Godhead, and she's expressing some pleasure that this will happen. And she's comparing it to being killed or cursed by brahmanas, or brahmana devotees is the translation in the yesterday's verse. So she is talking about her pleasure, her relief that her sons will be killed by the anger of the Lord and not making devotees angry, which is an interesting thing to be happy about. And then we hear today's verse. Does that make sense? Na Brahma Danda Dagdasya Na Brahma Danda Dagdasya Na Bhuta Bhaya Dasya Cha Na Bhuta Bhaya Dasya Cha Narakas Chanugrananti Narakas Chanugrananti Yam Yam Yonim Asogata Jam yam yonim asogata. Na brahma danda dagdasya. Na bhuta bhayadasya cha. Narakash chanugrinanti. Cham dhyam dhyonim asogataha. Sogita Na Brahmadanda Dagdasya Na Bhuta Bhayadasya Cha Narakaschanu Grananti Jam Jam Yonim Sogita Na Brahmadanda Dagdasya Na Bhuta Bhayadasya Cha Narakas Chanukrananti Cham Dyam Yonim Asogata. Ladies? Hare Krishna, go. Na Brahma Danda Dagdasya Na Bhuta Bhayadasya Cha Narakaschanu Grananti Jam Yam Jonim Asogata. Na Never Brahmadanda Punishment by a Brahmana. Dagdasya, of one who is so punished. Na, neither. Bhuta Bhayadasya, of one who is always fearful to the living entities. Cha, also. Nadaka, those condemned to hell. Cha, also. Anugrananti, do any favor. Dham dham, whichever. Jonim, species of life. Aso, the offender. Gataha, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Very interesting purport today. A person who is condemned by a Brahmana or is always fearful to other living entities is not favored either by those who are already in hell or by those in the species in which he is born. I think we'll repeat that. A person who is condemned by a Brahmana or is always fearful to other living entities is not favored either by those who are already in hell or by those in the species in which he is born. Purport by His Divine Grace. A practical example of a condemned species of life is the dog. Dogs are so condemned that they never show any sympathy to their contemporaries. Om Jnana Timanandasya Gyanandana Salakaya Chaksusan Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadammayam Tadati Swa Vandeham Sri Guru Siyuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakambitam Scha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So here the Brahmana is mentioned, and we've got to remember that in the whole in the whole Vedic civilization that stretched across the universe, the demons and the demigods, they both needed Brahmanas. So this sounds kind of strange because in our modern context, we don't have Vedic culture, nor do we have very much experience of it. But it's important to understand that in ancient times and even in modern times, there were Brahmanas and a society that approached the Brahmanas for fulfillment of different purposes. So the Vedas is very vast. There's millions of mantras. There's millions of demigods, millions of rishis and sages, and there's millions and millions of mantras. And those mantras, which are taught by the Brahmanas to normal people in society, are there for achieving certain goals. And we've got to understand that when we come to the material world, our main goal is to enjoy ourselves with all sorts of material happiness. It's just like when you go to preach sometimes, some people are not ready to hear about Krishna. Millions and millions of people, they're not at that position because the nature of the living entity in the material world is he's very proud and he's not ready to submit to teachings of a spiritual person or the scriptures. But in Vedic times, we see that people did submit to Vedic knowledge, and therefore society was full of Brahmanas. It's just like when I finished my last exam at school, I'd already booked, because I lived outside of England, I had to fly to London, and so I booked my flight on the last day of the exam. The exam was in the morning, so I flew in the afternoon. It means I left home that same day. And if I'd have met Hare Krishna who tried to preach to me at that time, I wouldn't have been so interested, even though I'd met the devotees, because I was so absorbed in the idea of material enjoyment. 17 years old, you're just ready and ripe to run away from home and go and enjoy all the things that you want to achieve. And to do that, I needed certain associations and certain abilities. So everyone in the material world is aspiring for some enjoyment. They're very greedy to enjoy their senses, and they're not ready for spiritual instruction. And it says in the Shastra, if you give spiritual instruction to a snake, if you give milk to a snake, you only increase its venom. So if you give spiritual instruction to someone who is envious of his own soul, actually, then he is going to become angry, upset, or something like that. Therefore, Shastra says to avoid the envious when you're preaching. Preach to the innocent people who are a bit more open or humble. But in Vedic culture, there was a submission to the Vedas. And the Vedas are divided into three paths: Bhukti, Mukti, and Bhakti, or Karmakand, Jnanakand, and Upasanakand. So, and also the whole awareness of sin and bad karma was very much entrenched in the people's consciousness. And so you have basically the vast majority of people, they want to enjoy their senses, And they hear from the Brahmins about going to heavenly enjoyment and enjoying their senses like anything, and enjoying in this world. So they're very busy doing sacrifices, rituals, and religious activities which are meant for enjoying their senses ultimately. Therefore, if you go back to Navadvip 500 years ago, say we all went to Navadvip 500 years ago, all of us now, and we were able to see Navadvip just prior to Lord Chaitanya's descent. So there was hundreds and thousands of people bathing in the Ganges. And they'd be chanting mantras, offering prayers, offering worship. And we'd think they're all spiritual, because from our point of view, the materialists in Kali Yuga, they're in the pubs and the restaurants, and they're working like dogs and trying to enjoy matter. So if you looked at those people, all dressed in sari and dhoti, with many Brahmins and pious people, all very clean, all bathing in the Ganges, worshipping the Ganges, you would think, wow. But the Vaishnavas, the devotees at that time, were a minority in Navadvip. And they were all very upset, because the people in Navadvip had become overwhelmed with material enjoyment, material desire. And they were following the Vedic karma kanda rituals with their brahmanas, etc., to enjoy the material world. That was the goal of their existence. Isn't that amazing? So Advaita Acharya, seeing this, he's crying and asking for special incarnation, Krishna to please come down. So therefore you have this conflict when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes and begins his Sankirtan mission. There's this conflict, not only with the Muslim leaders at the time, but with the local Brahmanas. The Brahmanas don't want to upset the status quo. They're all very interested in keeping everything nicely because they're making money, and society is very nice. And the different worshippers of the Shaktas, Durga Devi, and the logicians, and even the yogis, they are happy with the status quo. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants to interrupt that status quo by making everyone Vaishnavas. And therefore you have some envious events where the Vaishnavas would have their kirtan at night, and the local people would complain and condemn the Vaishnavas as a bunch of fanatics, etc., etc. So this is a situation that we have to understand when we read Srila Prabhupada's books, because for us, we read the Vaishnava scriptures immediately. We read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and we cannot imagine that there be a Brahmana who's supposed to be spiritual, who's not really spiritual. Deep down he's a materialist. He may be well versed in the Vedas, he may believe in Vishnu and the demigods, but he doesn't particularly have transcendental knowledge. Therefore he cannot be a spiritual master, he cannot deliver anyone. But he is in the mode of goodness, he's free from sin, and he studies and teaches different aspects of the Vedas. Like you go to a Brahmana for different things. So one Brahmana could be an Ayurvedic physician, one Brahmana could be an astrologer, one Brahmana could worship the deity, or one Brahmana could perform sacrifices for you to achieve a certain result. So this is making sense? So when we read about the Varnashram system, and for us, because we're Vaishnavas, we're devotees, and Prabhupada has trained us as devotees, we can't really have access to the mindset of this Vedic civilization so easily. It's difficult for us in the modern age. So the whole point of this is to, when you do appreciate it to some degree, then you understand more, you can appreciate more how glorious Krishna consciousness is. And there's that verse, Ahobhata Svapachagiriyan, that even a Brahmana is well versed in all Vedic, what is it exactly? I know you're very tired, you can help me. What does it say? 6? Is it say the 6?
No, it says you've done all performed all austerities.
Mm-hmm.
If the holy name is on his lips, to Prusapasti, to performed all yajnas and all austerities.
I was thinking. Yeah. So,
you've done all these things.
Yeah, the Brahmana, who may be well versed in all the Shastra, if he's not a devotee, or if he's an atheist, he is not as great as a dog eater. Sorry, I've quoted the wrong verse. So, in the Vedic society, the dog eater is the lowest person. The people who eat meat, but even lower than them are the dog eaters. But if a dog eater becomes a Vaishnava, and he chants the holy name of the Lord and accepts that the goal of life is to attain Krishna, then he's better than this Brahmana. You understand? And he can deliver all his family members, whereas the Brahmana cannot deliver himself. Because without Krishna consciousness, the Vedanta, the final end of knowledge, is not concluded. Therefore, you see in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna immediately teaches Arjuna, be above the flowery words of the Vedas, don't pay attention to them. Don't aspire for heavenly happiness because it's all a phantasmagoria. It's all a journey around the material universe which will never satisfy you. Bhunktvi Suchinam Srimata Gehe, that even after you've enjoyed vast heavenly delights, you have to fall back down to this material world. Therefore, he tells Arjuna to become a yogi. There's 3 verses he speaks about this, which I will just quickly look up. I had a note of them. Yeah. A yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the imperious, and greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, in all circumstances, be a yogi. And of all the yogis, the one who always abides in me with great and transcendental faith and renders service to me, he's the greatest of all. Brahmande Bhagate Kona Bhagavana Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Bhai. So after wandering all over the universe, if one meets a Vaishnava and takes instruction from him, he receives the seed of bhakti. And that seed is for his eternal good fortune. Where all these other seeds from the Vedas result in material happiness, and then after that there is liberation, the idea of liberation, Jnanakanda. So that liberation also can lead to a type of impersonalism, atheism. It's a very risky path. But there were impersonal Brahmanas that are not Mayavadis and not offensive to the Supreme Lord, and that path is also there. So from material enjoyment comes an exhaustion. And then from that exhaustion there's an interest in liberation from the cycle of birth and death. But beyond all of these paths is the path of Bhakti Yoga. It's a very simple path, and it is gained by the association of the pure devotee. Tuliyama levanapi na puna bhavam na bhavam puna bhavam Bhagavat Bhakti Bhagavat Sangasya ma chanam kimuta shisha. So the association of the pure devotee cannot be compared to attaining the heavenly planets or even liberation. What to speak of material enjoyment, which is meant for those who are meant for death. Macha means death. So tuliyama, just a levanapi, a moment association with the pure devotee. Sadhu Shastri Koi is the most wonderful thing. It's the most wonderful thing for us. So therefore you see, Kali Yuga is so chaotic. We make devotees come, they join, they're fired up, but then the amount of effort it takes to transcend our conditioning. So devotees go through very windy paths, and it's not so easy because we come from material conditioning. But because the bhakti is there, the seed of bhakti is there, that you cannot escape from Krishna's mercy, Lord Nityananda's mercy. Therefore, you continue spiritual life. You continue your Krishna consciousness through thick and thin. This is the secret of Krishna consciousness, to never give up chanting Hare Krishna, thinking of Krishna. This is the simple process of bhakti. So that was about the Brahmanas. The demons also approached the Brahmanas to achieve their aims, and the demigods needed Brahmanas. Just like Vamanadev or Bali Maharaj, when he was having a sacrifice, he was following his Brahmin guru Shukracharya, but Vamanadev came and upset the whole situation. And Shukracharya tried to advise Bali Maharaj, don't follow this dwarf brahmachari, you're going to lose everything, because he's Vishnu in disguise. But Bali Maharaj followed the higher dharma. He rejected his guru to follow the orders of the Lord. And Shukracharya later admitted Mantratas Chidram, that there may be faults in the place, faults in the person, faults in the time, but when the holy name of the Lord is chanted, then everything becomes perfect. So this is the Bhagavatam again reminding us of the Yuga Dharma, that you simply chant Hare Krishna, all your faults, all your problems, all your lower modes, your mistakes, they'll all be wiped away by the mercy of the holy name. And therefore you find that the Vaishnava, he can transcend or even go against Vedic culture. And there's thousands of examples of this in our Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I was going to think of one. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he took advice from Ramananda Roy, who was in the Sudra class. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was manifesting as a sannyasi, Brahmana, topmost. And our Acharya of chanting the holy name is Haridas Thakur. He's born in a Muslim family. So you see, the devotional service transcends all material designations like that. So the purport mentions dogs. I wasn't going to talk too much about dogs, but it says that the dog is a condemned species of life and never shows sympathy to their contemporaries. Now if you go to India, you'll see the dogs attack each other if they're from a different neighborhood, and they're quite aggressive. And we've seen that the dog sometimes, there's a story of the man living in a rural place, isolated. He dies, he lives with his dogs, and then the dogs eat him. So the dog has no compassion and no sympathy. He just lives for his immediate sense gratification. So a human being is not meant to be like that. So on the happier side of life, Krishna, he has two pet dogs. He has two pet dogs. And their names are Vyagriya and Brahmara. Vyagra means tiger, and Brahmara means bumblebee. Krishna has two dogs, two pet dogs. He has so many pets, actually. His cows, some of his cows, or his cows are his pets, and he has one deer. He has one peacock, actually, who's a pet, and he has parrots, some parrots. His chief parrot pet is called Vikchakchana, and he uses these parrots to spy on where the gopis are. so he can go and ambush them or frighten them or attack them, like in a playful way, of course. Srimati Radharani, she has a pet deer named Rangini. She has a pet doe baby and a baby cow. And she has a pet swan that likes to swim in Radha Kund. So we also have pets in the spiritual world. Krishna has. And in this way, they enjoy actual existence. Whereas in the material world, people, instead of loving God, they love dog. You know, when I grew up in the 70s and 80s, Glasgow, if someone was a Glaswegian or Glasgow, had a notoriety. It was the most frightening place in Britain, you know, even worse than Liverpool or Manchester when I was growing up. So the Glaswegian was a terrifying personality. I hope no one's from Glasgow here. But in them days, there was that reputation, very violent, aggressive, and the gangsters and all these problems. So Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, he went to Glasgow and he gave a big lecture on the stage with his disciples. And this man stood up in the end, he said, "I am God." And Prabhupada, he said, "No, you are dog." And the man sat down and the whole place erupted into cheers because they were God-fearing people in there. You're not from Glasgow, are you? You are. Because it's changed now, it's become much nicer, isn't it? Since Prabhupada came. So Prabhupada said, "You are dog." So anyone who wants to be God, he is lower than he is like a dog. And of course, everyone is worshipping dog, and they are very much absorbed in their dogs, in their pets. How many hours of their day they spend fawning over their pets. In Vedic culture, the dog is not allowed in the house. And we won't talk about so many things like that. But there you go. Hare Krishna. So thank you for your patience. If anyone wants any points of discussion, I tried my best on this winter's morning. Hare Krishna. Yes, Govinda Prabhu.
If you're looking at just now coming. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Krishna.
I find it interesting that there's a mention of Srivas Thakur having dogs. There's a mention of the dog in the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So it seems like quite a lot of the advanced devotees in Chaitanya Charitamrita have dogs. Any thoughts on that one?
I mean, they're part of society, isn't it? They're there. If you go to any of the large houses around India, there's always dogs there, and one of their main purposes is to keep away the other dogs. If you have your own dogs, then the other dogs know it's not their territory, they will not disturb. But if you have no dogs, then, like I was just in South India last autumn, and you go for a walk, it's all jungle. The whole place is in Karnataka. It's a huge jungle, and you go for a walk, and there's dogs everywhere, wild ones, loose ones, and they bark. And there were some ladies staying there, and Western ladies, and they were afraid to go for a walk. So there's a problem there with dogs. Generally, you have wild ones. So the local people, they keep a dog, they feed it, and then that dog protects from other dogs. So every animal in the society, outside of human society, they have their purpose. They all have their purpose. So the human beings can keep dogs it's not a problem. The problem is when you become absorbed in affection for them, and when they take up all of your time. This is the problem. Dogs is not a problem. Prabhupada says to become a dog is a condemned species of life. His lifestyle is abominable. He's kept on a chain most of the day, fed a few scraps. He's probably always feeling hunger and slightly bored. You see the dog sometimes, if there's a little bug flying, they become very absorbed in the bug. Sometimes they try to bite it. So it's a dog's life. But every dog has its day. So we are like dogs compared to civilized human beings. But we have our day, and that day is that we become Lord Nityananda's dog, and we serve him, Lord Nityananda. So serve as Lord Nityananda, not to sit around the temple studying, but to go out and preach Krishna consciousness. And this is the order of the spiritual master. And if we don't do the order of the spiritual master, then we will be in a difficult situation. So dogs, yes. Some of the Vaishnavas had dogs. There's a few stories like that. No problem. Panchatattva Prabhu. Someone opened a window.
So thank you very much, Prabhu. I just wanted to ask about this Brahminical culture, or Vedic culture.
No. Okay.
You're talking about how the demons are also approaching Brahmanas or expert in ritual, and it seems like from an outside perspective, for those of us who are not really raised with any connection to that Vedic culture, it seems it's almost easier to approach Krishna not from the Vedic culture.
Yes.
Because it's so confusing elsewhere. But then why is so much emphasis on the Vedic culture throughout all the ages in the universe?
From whose perspective there's so much emphasis on Vedic culture?
Like, we're living in an anomaly right now where there's not Vedic culture.
Yeah.
But the majority of time, majority of places...
Because, the demons also approach the demigods. Hiranyakashipu approached Lord Brahma, Ravana worshipped Shiva, and Banasura worshipped Shiva, and Shatrajit worshipped the sun god. Is that right, Shatrajit? Yeah. And, so they all worshipped demigods, but they didn't worship Krishna. And they all met with a very bad ending. So Srila Prabhupada wanted us to establish Varnashram, and everyone has a difficulty understanding what that really means. So in some of Prabhupada's conversations, you can see that he allows for materialists to live in that Varnashram system and perform things like, if they want to eat meat, they can go to the forest and kill the animal. They can't kill cows, but they can go and kill a rabbit or a deer. So Prabhupada allows for that, because if they follow the direction of the higher authority within that demoniac activity, they will gradually become purified very slowly and be able to one day become eligible for spiritual life. So the necessity of the Vedic culture is to reduce the sin and increase the piety. Yesham tantakatam papam. And within that culture, there's respect for the Brahmanas and respect for sadhus. So that respect also gives them a pious act, which increases their chances of one day coming to spiritual life. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas so that people would pay him respects, and therefore they would reduce their sinful reaction and become more eligible for bhakti. See, we're all sitting here and we're familiar with being devotees, but it's actually, we don't know what we did in our previous life to be able to be in this situation. Shastra says that when your term of conditional life is coming to an end, you get the association of devotees. So there's so much going on, piety and impiety. So with Vedic culture then there are more chance for piety. And then the world becomes more peaceful, stop killing cows. Imagine if they stopped killing cows. It would be, the world would improve. There would be less violence amongst human beings. So why not? Why not follow Vedic culture? But it'll never be like it was. So you're dead right. It's easier to get bhakti now because we have no contamination of demigod worship or all these lines. But if you go to India, you'll find people do. In their village they worship Hanuman, they have this mantra, and for them it's all the same. Well, worshipping Hanuman, you're worshipping Krishna. They don't quite understand bhakti, what bhakti is. Does that make sense? Govinda Prabhu?
Just a quick comment on my question.
Yeah.
I remember several years ago someone was telling me there's a group of Brahmins in either Bali or Malaysia and they eat cows. I mean, it's incredible how the culture can kind of deviate to that extent, but that's tradition for them. The question is, tradition. Dogs get a bad name on this particular purport, but sometimes, you know, they get praised for being loyal.
Can you?
And Bhaktivinoda Thakur sees himself as...
Can you stop talking, please?
Bhaktivinoda Thakur sees himself as Krishna's dog. Prabhupada said the spiritual master is like Krishna's dog. So if you please the dog, you please the master. So by pleasing the spiritual master, you please Krishna. So it seems that quite a lot of the time, dogs get a good name.
Yeah. Prabhupada said the dog has good qualities, loyalty, and such forth. Brahmanas also get a bad name a lot of the time, isn't it? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he had a lot of problems with the Brahmanas. Even in Vrindavan, they only one temple in Vrindavan allowed him, and that was Radharaman. So there's this conflict. Hare Krishna.
I would just like to ask, how is a vet's life seen in Vedic culture? A veterinarian who looks after dogs, cats, any animal that seems to need help.
I have no idea. I mean, I'm sure it's okay. It's okay.
I was getting quite confused when you were talking about dogs and how people treat them, etc. But certainly if somebody sees a starving, injured animal, it's your duty to try and help that.
Oh yeah. The real human being will help all creatures, great and small.
Right. How is it going to affect that person's progress?
With the soul in the animal or the person? Huh?
Going towards another planet, meeting Krishna, meeting a higher planetary matter.
What do you mean, sorry?
I'm talking about kindness to animals.
Yeah.
How is it going to affect the Vedic character? And I think...
Well, put it this way, devotee, he develops all good qualities by his devotional service.
Absolutely.
So he's kind to everyone, and he respects all living entities as part and parcel of Krishna. But the materialist, he eats the animals and he slaughters them. So he's not going to get very good reaction for that.
I think I understand it. Thank you.
Prabhupada said once that, Prabhupada saw his disciples taking care, an ant had got into a situation, the devotee helped the ant, you see. So Prabhupada said this, I've turned the cow eaters into compassion for all living entities. Do you want to still ask your question?
Yeah.
Last question then.
Actually, I just remembered Prabhupada would sometimes say, give the dog a bad name and hang it. Anyway, my question is unrelated to dogs. It's you were talking about spending time in the heavenly planets. So the unsuccessful yogi could be promoted in his next life to the heavenly planets. What happens after that? Does he necessarily have to come back down once his pious credits have been exhausted, come back to earth, or can he, be elevated to the spiritual world from there?
Yeah, it depends on what type of person he is and how he got there. So some yogis, they're on their way back to the spiritual world, or even some devotees are on their way back to the spiritual world, but they need to go to the heavenly planets for some enjoyments first, due to some desires. And then from there, either the yogi or the devotee can then go up to further progression. There's one description like that in the Bhagavatam. Very step-by-step process. But generally, the people who get into heavenly planets from karma kanda situation, they have to come back down to the earth, because they got there purely on the merits of mechanical, ritualistic sacrifice. Whereas a yogi or a devotee has devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his achievements are different. There's one purport where Prabhupada describes the devotee is not bereft of all material pleasures. There's one story that when Yudhisthira was young, he asked Krishna, can I want to have a beautiful wife, most beautiful wife, and I want to be emperor of the whole world and have unlimited opulence? And Krishna says, you're a pure devotee, why are you asking these things, for these material things? He says, I want to show that anyone is your devotee doesn't have to renounce material happiness either. He can have all these things, all opulence. So it doesn't have to be a renunciate or you live in the Himalayas with nothing. This is the point. So these devotees, they are not going hungry. They have clothes and they have houses and they keep warm, and they can have all material happiness at the same time as Krishna consciousness. Whereas the non-devotee, he has to depend entirely on his pious activities to get material happiness, which have a tiny bit of bhakti in them, and that's what gives the result. So all the Vedas have a little bhakti in all the processes. But it's not, it's contaminated with material, one's own selfish desires. Whereas pure bhakti is a completely different thing. Okay? Go on then quickly.
So, all these people that have somewhat been connected to some Vedic culture, but they've lost the plot. So, how would you preach to them? How would you? Or should we forget it and just focus on Westerners?
Give them prasadam. Chant Hare Krishna. Try to get them to read the books.
So encourage them to.
Yeah.
The same.
Yeah. They're also devotees. They come to see Krishna.
Yeah.
They're devotees. Some of them will get serious by your association and your mercy. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Bye.